Hi, my name is Amy and I have ADHD, and this is my story. Growing up, I always felt different, and I hated that feeling because it was evidenced in my entire life to be true. I remember feeling it from as young as 4 or 5 years old, and I don't actually remember a time in my life where I haven't had that feeling. From as young as like primary school, for example, I felt different because all these other kids went to school and life just seemed so easy for them. Like, they would go to school, they knew how to behave in class, how to speak to the teachers, how to make friends, and how to actually like keep and interact with their friends, whereas I just didn't. No matter how hard I tried or listened to the adults around me, copied the other kids, I was just different. I didn't fit in, and it was wrong, and it was all my fault. It was like my entire body and essence wasn't built for the world that was around me. And it was like I had this big neon glowing sign on top of my head that said, hey, she's different, she's weird, she doesn't fit in, and it's all her fault. Because I would get in trouble at school for talking too much, for not behaving like the other kids, for not being like the other kids, for not having friends or a friendship circle like the other kids. And it was always my fault. I was always told by the teachers, like, oh, why can't you be more like so-and-so? Why can't you be more like that child? And I remember thinking, like, I am trying so hard, and I don't know why I physically can't be like that. And it was hard because it wasn't just in school, it was in every single aspect of my life. Like, I remember getting told off by like my mum or other family members, and them saying things like, why are you doing that? Why can't you be more like the other kids? Why can't you just behave? Or you're doing it on purpose. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know. I promise you, I'm not doing it on purpose. I just don't know how to not do it like this. I don't know how to do it or be like everyone else. And that's on a very top level kind of surface of talking too much in class, not being able to sit still, not being the same as everybody else. But it was on such a much deeper level than that. Like in primary school, for example, I got bullied from the other kids, for little things, like made fun on, picked on slightly because I didn't fit in. And the older I got, the kind of worse it got because I genuinely didn't know how to act. And sometimes my brain would just act without me even giving consent for it to happen. A prime example of this, I can remember once in primary school, we was in the playground, it was all like everyone's class would kind of sit and interact together. And I remember we was all just chilling, and I just was speaking and happened to say a swear word in the sentence. Did not plan to say that, did not intentionally say it, just sort of came out naturally with the sentence I was saying, and everybody freaked out. And when it happened, I was like, I didn't say a swear word, that wasn't me. No, I didn't. They were like, everyone was like, no, yes, you did. You said a swear word. Oh my gosh, you said a swear word. You're naughty, you're bad, can't believe you've done this. And I was like, wait, what? And I wanted to shrivel up and just disappear in that moment, to the point where I physically got up and ran away from all of the other kids. I think I was in like year 3 or year 4 at this point, and I literally ran away from all of the other kids because my whole entire being, it felt like I had to flee, like I had to run, like I physically could not be in that situation anymore. So I bolted, and the other kids chased me. Like, can you imagine? You are a child. You do not realize what you've just said. Like, I knew it was a swear word. I knew it was a bad word. I did not mean categorically to say it. It just came out of my mouth, which was great. And you've got 20 other kids chasing you. Not fun. But situations like that happened all of the time. But because I didn't really know how to interact with people, and I was told all the time, just be better, be like everybody else in school, at home, I so badly wanted to fit in with everybody. And I think that was really obvious. And it meant that I was easily manipulated into doing things. And it led me to being situations which were fundamentally unsafe for me as a child to be in. The older I got, kind of the bullying escalated more. I remember getting bit by this one kid all of the time. And it was my fault because I put myself in those situations. It was my fault. And I was like, oh, okay, I was a child, I was like, yes, it is my fault then. Or being like picked on, or, like called names and stuff like that from other kids. And then it got to a point where another child recognized that I was able to be sort of manipulated and pushed into certain circumstances, and I ended up being abused for quite a long while, and being in a situation that put me in a physically unsafe place for a while, quite a long time. Eventually, like, when my mum found out, she stepped in. She was horrified at the situation, put a stop to all of the bullying, the abuse, and actually moved me from primary schools. But it wasn't just in school that situations like, not like that were happening, but where I just didn't know what the right thing to do was, or wasn't even fully aware of, like, myself. For instance, like, I remember growing up and being told off because of the way that I was looking when someone was talking to me. And I remember thinking, like, and saying, like, I'm not looking at you in a certain way. Like, I'm not pulling a specific face. Like, I genuinely don't mean to look like this. And no one believed me because they just assumed, because all the other kids do it on purpose, that I was doing it on purpose. And I was like, I promise, I'm not. Like, I'm genuinely not. So they moved me primary schools, and they're like, okay, it's going to be better now. She's going to be in a new primary school. She's going to be fine. It was the school that was the problem. It's not her. It was the school. It wasn't the school. Spoiler, it was not the school. It was, in fact, me. Moved to the new school again. Wasn't fitting in. All the other kids were like, oh, why do you say these things? Like, I would end up saying stuff. And this has been an issue my entire life, where I say stuff, and the way that I mean it in my head is not malicious. It's not nasty. But the way that it comes out sounds malicious or nasty. Like, if someone said it to me, I wouldn't necessarily think it would be a bad thing, but it comes out in the wrong way, and I ended up hurting, like, other kids' feelings and stuff like that, because they just genuinely thought I was trying to be mean. And I would have to say, like, no, I'm sorry, and then, like, explain, like, what I meant. But obviously we were young at that age, so they just thought, you know, I don't know, whatever. Sometimes those friendships ended up being mended, but changing schools didn't, like, fix the situation. In fact, it just cemented more that there was something wrong with me, because I was always being told off, and as the older I got, it also became an issue where if someone was criticizing me, I remember always being told, like, oh, you can't take criticism. And that got worse, when I went to high school. Like, I went to high school abroad in Spain, in not a super rural area, but a kind of a rural area where, like, most people knew everybody. Like, most kids from all the different schools kind of knew each other or knew of each other. Like, it was, it was kind of small. And growing up in high school, I remember being, like, told off by my family all the time, like, you can't take criticism, like, you need to learn to take it, you need to, like, grow a backbone, you need to learn to be told you're wrong on all of this. And I never understood why for everyone else it was so easy to hear stuff like that, whereas when you told me, oh, it's wrong, or, like, something was bad, although I stood there and I tried to, like, I learned to put a smile on my face and be like a placid expression, like, it felt like within my whole body, like, my whole body was on fire. Like, I wanted to be sick. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to, like, rip my skin off and throw it off, or just go and hide in a corner or a pit or something. And that felt like a completely normal reaction to me. But everyone was telling me, no, that's wrong. That's not how you should react. You're wrong for reacting like that. And as kind of high school progressed and I got older, that feeling of not fitting in and being fundamentally wrong just blew up. It solidified, and sort of nearly every single day there was a situation or a sentence that would have, like, something would happen that cemented even more that, yes, Amy, in fact, you are the problem. You are the issue. You are the thing that is wrong. Like, I remember, for example, I think I was like 13 years old and I was in high school, and I was just sat like this, like, just resting my face, because I was bored. I was bored in school for whatever reason, and I was just looking around, not looking at anyone in particular. And afterwards, this girl comes up to me and goes, "What's your problem with me?" And I was like, "What? Huh?" Like, wasn't even fully aware that she was even there. And then she approaches me and she's like, "What is your problem with me?" Like, with her two friends as well. And I'm like, and she's more popular than me, so I'm thinking, oh my god, like, am I about to be, like, bullied right now? Am I gonna get hurt? Like, what's the situation? And she's like, "No, I've seen the way you've been staring at me. Like, what is your problem with me? Like, if you don't like me, just say it." I was like, "I like you." I've never really spoken to her. We was kind of friends. I was like, "I like you." I genuinely was like, I don't know where this is coming from. She's like, "Well, can you tell your face that? Your face says that you hate me." And I was like, "What?" And there was a couple of times when, like, that same interaction had been said, and I then learned to hold my face instead of naturally, which is like this, to put a little soft smile and not relax my face as much to what's comfortable for me, because it made other people think that I didn't like them, which apparently is normal for others. For me, not normal. Doesn't feel normal for me to do that. Another example of just not kind of understanding social situations or saying like the wrong thing was, I was speaking to this girl, super close with her, like kind of best friends situations, absolutely loved her to pieces. Katie, if you happen to watch this, you were great. One point we was in class and she, we're just having a conversation, and I just said, oh no, you don't, like, she's like, oh yeah, I know Amy 100%. I was like, you don't know me 100%. And she was so heartbroken by that, the fact that I had said that. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't understand. She's like, we're best friends. How can you say, like, I don't know you 100%? I was like, I mean, no one can know anyone 100%. I was like, I don't even know myself 100%. And to me, that was like an obvious thing, like an obvious meaning to that sentence. But it was not, very clearly. And it completely broke her heart and her feelings. And I had to apologize. And situations like that happened all of the time, where I would just say stuff that I thought was normal or was okay, when in fact it was not. It was not the right thing to say or the right thing to do. And where most other kids kind of learn how to react in those situations, I didn't. And even now, I still get it wrong. Alhamdulillah, like, it's a lot better now that I'm nearly 30. To nearly 30 years. And a lot of therapy. But in high school, it was hell for me, because everything I'd experienced in primary school just overnight kind of got worse, And I remember at one point as well, I was like 2 years into this Spanish school. It was kind of split between sort of expat families of like British or English speaking families, and then the Spanish, because it was a public school. And all the English were kind of friends with each other, would hang out together and whatever. And the two groups never really mixed. But I just did, and I just spoke to whoever was near me. I didn't really care, never did, about anything, just went with the flow. And I remember once I was outside and this guy said, and it was quiet, so everyone heard him. We're talking maybe like 100 students were there. And he goes, God, Amy just doesn't know how to fit in. She needs to pick a side. Like, she needs to figure out where she's going. She's so weird. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. Like, even now, from like as an adult, I don't get why we couldn't all be friends. But also, I didn't see the issue with kind of just flitting between everybody, being friends with this friendship group one day, friends with this another day, not being friends with anyone, but just kind of being everywhere, friends with everybody. But it was taught to me that was like a nasty thing, that no, you're supposed to have like a super best friend and a super best friend group, and that's it, and situations like that happened a lot growing up, and it was really difficult and really hard to deal with. Like, the other kids would say stuff and I genuinely wouldn't understand what they were saying, and I'd just okay, nod and smile and agree. And the older I got, that kind of not fitting in just got so much worse. And I eventually ended up switching schools again, not because of bullying or anything, purely for educational academic purposes. I wanted to complete my international wide GCSEs, which I couldn't do at that school. Moved to a new school, and it was like overnight, whatever was wrong with me just got so much worse and amplified. And it was the time of Tumblr, and Tumblr at that point didn't have super big safety measures, which meant that like you could literally go on and you could search for pictures of like self-harm, Anna inspos. If you know what an Anna inspo is, I am so sorry, but you could search for like anorexia inspiration pics or like super skinny pics and stuff like that to kind of use as a goal, which obviously was not conducive to good mental health. But my entire life I was told, you as a human being are fundamentally wrong and need to be better. So to me, it just seemed right. And then when I moved schools, there were so many situations where it was a tiny school. I think in our class we had like 10 people or something like that, maybe even less than that. And it was the same like year 7, 8 and 9. I think we're all one big class because there was just not enough students to fill 3 separate classes. So everybody knew everyone's business, like every single second, every single minute part of their life was just public knowledge, and even the teachers knew everything. So overnight, all of those little nuanced situations that I struggled with of not fitting in was suddenly amplified to every single person that I saw every single day around me, which obviously like tanked my mental health. And growing up, I didn't have any coping mechanisms to know what to do with this feeling, so I turned to things like self-harm and not eating and anorexia, thinking that maybe if I looked different, maybe if I punished myself for feeling like this or acting like this, acting in the way that I've always been told is wrong, that maybe it would make the situation better. Maybe it would fix whatever was wrong with me. Spoiler alert, it did not fix it. It made the situation so much worse. But like, the whole school knew that I was like, my mental health was really bad, that I was depressed. Yeah, no one said that that's wrong. No one said that actually maybe we should help this kid. Like, the teachers knew, and it just got so much worse because they could see all the ways that I was interacting or doing stuff, and they called, because that was wrong or what they didn't deem as socially acceptable, it was kind of like justified for me to feel like that in a way. And then a situation happened where something happened and I reacted impulsively in the moment. Shouldn't have reacted the way that I did, but because of how I reacted, I could then not prove my innocence in this situation to say like, hey, no, I wasn't in the wrong. I promise you, like, I wasn't in the wrong. But impulsivity kicked in. I chose the wrong choice in that moment, which meant that I couldn't prove I was innocent, and literally the entire school thought I was guilty of this thing. No one wanted to hear my side of the story. No one wanted to hear the truth of the side of the story, or no one even, because I was like the new girl still, no one wanted to even consider the fact that there could be a drip of truth to anything that I was saying. And overnight I went from, kind of how things had always been in the past, like, high school years, of not fitting in, saying the wrong things, being lightly, not picked on, but lightly, like, joked about, or the butt of someone's joke because of how I didn't always fit in, to suddenly getting messages online to tell me to go on a live myself, to having literally no one speak to me at school and ignore me like I just didn't exist, to think that, like, oh, you shouldn't even come into school today. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be existing in this world. I have people telling me daily to go on a live myself. They knew that I self-harmed, and they're like, oh, just do it a bit more. Just do it a bit more so you don't come into school tomorrow. And it got so bad to the point where someone's mum posted on Facebook about this, where I could see it to all of her friends, and all of her friends jumped on the bandwagon. Bear in mind, I was 16 years old, and if anyone had stopped and spoken to me, they would have heard my side of the story and gone, okay, actually no, she wasn't in the wrong. Yes, she could have handled the situation better, and maybe she shouldn't have said, or maybe I shouldn't have said or did certain things, but at the very core of it, of the whole thing that started this off, the thing that I was accused of, I didn't do. Yeah, I had no way to prove it because I deleted everything that could possibly prove my innocence, because my brain told me that was the right choice to make in that moment. But I was getting this hate, such intense hate from everyone around me. And when you have been told your entire life you are wrong, your existence is wrong, you don't fit in, you believe it. And it got to a point where I was 16 and I couldn't see myself turning 17. A few times I had tried to make sure I didn't see 17. And it got really, really bad. Even the teachers knew, they would see me throw my lunch away. They would see the marks. They would, see the things, and they wouldn't do anything. They didn't care. They didn't tell my family. They didn't make any changes. There was no safeguarding, which does make me wonder if I should actually name and shame the school, for fear of it ever happening to another kid, of them being in such a vulnerable mental health situation and no caring adult actually stepping in because they put their personal feelings first, and didn't care for my physical safety. And it actually took this one girl saw what I had done to myself and was like, OMG, and sat me down and asked for my side of the story. And to this day, I don't actually think she knows how much she changed my life in that single conversation, where she sat down and asked, hey, what actually happened? What's the truth? What's your side of the story? And when I said like, hey, yeah, I shouldn't have said those things, or I shouldn't have done those things, but also that very core thing I was being accused of, I didn't do it. And when you look at the history and all of these things that had happened beforehand, again, yes, I said things and did things that were wrong, but that very core thing I didn't do. And when you look at the whole history, I am not this bad person. Actually, I am a victim of what's going on right now, because no one had stopped to look at that entire situation as a whole with a wider lens. And she could see how much I was struggling. Like, I had gone from a size like 10, size 12, maybe at a push, size 10, to fitting in kids' clothes. We're talking age 10 clothes I was fitting in. Size 6 was too big for me. It was falling off. But because I'm, like, how my build is, you couldn't actually see how skinny I was until I stood on a scale and you saw, actually, okay, you are very, very light. Like, that's not healthy. That's not safe. That's not good, you know? And she was like, you need to tell your grandparents, because that's who I lived with at the time, you need to tell your grandparents before you make a choice you cannot come back from. And although in my head I hadn't seen myself turning 17 or having a future of any kind, her saying that, she was like, you know, your grandparents, they deserve to know what's going on. They deserve to know what is happening to you and how you're feeling. They deserve to know this. And I was like, I don't know why it worked or how it worked, but it woke something up inside me. And I don't think it was that same day. I think it was like a week or two later. I sat my grandparents down, my grandma first, and I was like, hey, I need to talk to you. And I showed her what I was doing. And I told her what was happening and how I was feeling. And they were like, okay, we need to do something about this. You know, no one kind of thought any bigger picture of like ADHD or anything at that point. They just saw, okay, because I didn't know what depression was at that point. I didn't know what depression meant. And I remember sitting her down and going like, I feel sad and I don't know why I feel sad. There is no physical reason. Like, for me, there was times when I was like, I felt sad and there was no physical reason for me to feel sad. I was like, oh, I don't understand it. And that's when she was like, okay, we need to do something. And I went to a psychologist, and he tried to start kind of the process of figuring out what was actually wrong and how could we fix it. And it turned out he just thought it was a bit of anxiety growing up. So I was given some anxiety medication to try and help. And still, when it didn't work, my grandparents took me back and were like, hey, yeah, she doesn't want to exist. So can you do something before she tries to delete herself from this world? And again, he tried like some stronger medication to try and help me. But that still fundamental like interactions with people around me wasn't fixed. You know, I still struggled. And, you know, when I then moved back to the UK to go to college, it still wasn't there. Like, they switched my mental health team from Spain to the UK. They started to assess me. As I went through college, the same kind of pattern repeated itself of making friends and never really fitting in, of making impulsive choices. But as I got older, it got worse, of like going to school and quitting school and starting jobs and quitting jobs and moving house, moving out by myself, dyeing my hair, impulsive spends, and quite a lot of choices that I think if someone had bothered to kind of sit down and analyse these all in one go, could have actually seen the real core issue. But the truth is, there are things in my childhood and stuff and things that have happened to me in my life that I haven't mentioned here that were very, very traumatic and very, very bad. And so people kind of like hyper-focused on that. So when all of these bad situations were happening and I was in front of psychiatrists and psychologists, they were like, oh yeah, she's just depressed. She's just anxious. Let's stick her on all of these antidepressants and stuff, and that's just going to fix her. She's just sad. That's going to fix this whole issue. No one kind of bothered to think maybe there's something else. And as I grew up, it didn't really work. And when I was 18, they went, oh yeah, we think you're bipolar. We think you have bipolar. And at that point I was like, okay, great. I've got a label. I can fix it. I can work it out. I can deal with it. I'm bipolar. They stuck me on all of this medication and were like, yeah, you're bipolar. That's it. That's what you've got. And it didn't work. sure, I started eating again. I, stopped losing weight. I started eating. I stopped harming all the time, and my mental health did improve. But that core, not fitting in, responding to situations in the wrong way, not being able to truly have proper friendships, or not treating friends in the way that is socially acceptable, was still there. All of that was still there. It was like, this is the big problem and we're just going to address this a little bit here, which meant that growing up, 18, thought, okay, I got bipolar, that's it, let's deal with that. And then from sort of the next, I would say 4 or 5 years, I was working with a team to try and deal with that, I went through every single type of therapy you can name, because I was like, I am going to fix me. I am going to fix me. I'm going to become better, because all the psychiatrists and stuff were saying, oh, you can fix it. You can treat bipolar. You can learn how to deal with it. You can essentially be normal, for want of a better word. Not normal, but not feel the way that I felt. So I went through CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, talking therapy, mindfulness therapy, every group therapy, every single therapy, I have probably had it and gone through it. And I know so many coping mechanisms now. It is amazing. But then fast forward to 6 years and still had the issues. Still, the social interactions were the same thing. Still, going through life, I still had that same feeling. And I was still being told, oh, what you're doing is wrong. How you're acting is wrong. What you're saying is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. Why are you being weird? That wasn't fixed. And I was like, I've got no idea. But I could go through, I met my husband. We had a child and all of this. And when I had my child, my daughter, all of the medication I was taking for bipolar, you cannot take when you're pregnant. It can severely impact the fetus and can give the baby quite a lot of issues. So overnight I had to stop them pretty much cold turkey, just stop taking all the medication. They were like, it's fine. I had a huge mental health team there, perinatal mental health team stepping in, checking in on me, making sure I was safe and stuff, because they were very concerned that I was going to have a mental breakdown from not being on these medications. And nothing happened. For nearly 10 years, I was told, not nearly 10 years, sorry, for 5 years or something, I was told I was bipolar and that these medications I would need to be on for the rest of my life, and that was what was wrong with me. And I was pregnant, went off them, and I was fine. There was no issues. Of course I got sad or anxious sometimes, but I'd had therapy. I knew how to deal with that. I knew how to overcome that depression, overcome that anxiety, because it doesn't last forever. But still, that core issue of that I'd always felt, the impulsivity, the talking too much. Every single person I know, I had this one friend, she was like, you're like a golden retriever puppy. If you are excited about something, you just go off. Of starting hobbies, quitting hobbies, all of these different things that people thought, oh, it was because of bipolar, were still there. But all the other aspects of bipolar that categorize you as having bipolar didn't happen. And that made every single psychiatrist and psychologist go, wait, hang on a minute. You should be mentally insane right now because you're not on these medications. What's going on with you? So then they thought it was a fluke. Gave birth to my daughter. And again, I was fine. Had a bit of postnatal anxiety because my daughter was born sick. But again, years of therapy, I was okay. I knew how to cope with it, how to deal with it, how to not let it take full control of my life. And that's when one of the psychiatrists was like, are you autistic? Do you have ADHD? Could that be a solution? Because she'd been around me for a long time. She was like, I think you might have. And it had been mentioned before, right before I'd fell pregnant, I was going through mindfulness therapy. And the psychologist there was like, I don't know if it's ADHD or autism, but I think you could have one of them, if not both. And she was like, I actually think you probably have both, because just from the interaction she'd had with me for weeks and weeks on end, she was like, you are meeting every single kind of thing that is to be diagnosed with it. Then when I had my first and had the psychiatrist, she said the same thing. Again, it was repeated. Do you have ADHD? Do you have autism? You seem like you would have ADHD. And at that point, people weren't really talking about ADHD much. it had started to pick up kind of awareness of what ADHD is, how it looks in women, how it appears in women, how it affects women in their day-to-day life, but it still wasn't really known much about or talked about. And then I got pregnant with my second, and at this point, like for about 6 or 7 months before I got pregnant with him, TikTok started kind of giving people a platform to talk about ADHD. And people started seeing these videos, and it started to happen where people were approaching me like, hang on a minute, Amy, do you have ADHD? I saw this video and it looks just like you. It reminds me just like you. Like, you were my first thought. And people started to send me these videos. Got pregnant with my second, and shortly before, like, I'd got pregnant with my second, like, I'd started a new job, and everyone there was like, do you have ADHD? Like, you are the poster for ADHD, because at that point then the videos had really started to pick up on TikTok of people like talking about it. There was a massive increase in adults being diagnosed with ADHD in the UK. And then I have my son, like I'm about to have my son, and I get put on the same perinatal mental health team I had before, and they are like, we are pretty certain you have ADHD and potentially autism as well. Autism not like as severe, but definitely like ADHD. And I was like, oh, okay, because, you know, when people were doing the videos, I was like, oh, yeah, maybe probably ADHD, like, it kind of sounds like me, very much sounds like me and stuff like this. But because no one had ever brought it up before, I'd never really thought, oh, ADHD is the reason why I am the way I am. And then the more, like, everyone was bringing up, showing these videos, not from people, but from psychologists, psychiatrists, from mental health professionals who were talking about what ADHD looks like in women. And I was like, wait, that is me. That is how I've always felt. That is what I've been told is wrong or what's naughty. And I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with this information, because, like, I've got the coping mechanisms now. I know how to deal with those situations where I don't get anxious or depressed. And honestly, if I have friends that can't deal with the way I am, then that's fine. We're not meant to be friends. And if you can, great, yay, amazing, we're buddies. You know, so I was like, is there even a point in me trying to get diagnosed or to even go down that route? Have my second child, my son, and after I give birth to him, again, I have that perinatal team. She's coming to visit me like every couple of weeks, and she's like, I think we should try and get you on the ADHD diagnosis list, because it could really help you, if not to be medicated, just to kind of like have a way to be supported, a way to look into support and stuff like that if you need it. Then at that point, my life starts to get so incredibly hard. I get put on the wait list for ADHD, and I'm waiting at that point for over a year to be diagnosed. And during that year, everything just gets so much harder. I start doing so much more research about what ADHD is, how to cope with ADHD, how to like live if you have ADHD. And like every single psychologist was saying like, no, you definitely do not have bipolar. We don't, you know, someone had previously mentioned like borderline personality disorder. Even then they were like, we really don't think you have that either, because it's not like you can have therapy and just like overcome borderline personality disorder. You know, they were like, it doesn't make sense. All of these previous diagnoses, so they were all written out the window. So I started doing my own research. I'm like, okay, how can I deal with this? How can I cope? But it got to a point where ADHD was starting to ruin my life. And I was like, if this is ADHD, I need to find out what I can do to make this better, what I can do to kind of help me deal with every single day life and deal with these situations that I'm in where everyone else seems to thrive and I seem to struggle so badly. So alhamdulillah, then I got diagnosed early this year, which I eventually had to go private because I was waiting for like a year and a half, nearly like 2 years on the NHS to be diagnosed. And despite chasing, they were like, no, there's nothing you can do unless you go private. So I went private. And they did this whole like diagnosis looking at the history of me, asking, oh my gosh, so many questions. Like my husband had to fill out this questionnaire. They wanted my whole history. And during the meeting, she asked me so many questions. She was like, you are literally the poster of ADHD and adult women. You are like every single kind of like symptom of what says that you have ADHD. You've got it. And then she said something which truly broke my heart. She was like, if you had been diagnosed as a child or even as a teenager, there is a very high chance that some of the situations I was in, I would have been able to deal with more easily, or some of the situations that I had gone through, they wouldn't have happened, or maybe it would have been a lot easier to deal with, or anything like that. Like, there are certain things that happened with the mental health teams, because there was quite a lot they did wrong, unfortunately, for a long time, in terms of like ignoring it and stuff. She was like, a lot of that, she was like, I don't know actually if I should say this, but a lot of that could have been rectified. And if you kind of want to help yourself, it would be really good for you to sort of step into like medication, and you've done the therapy and that, but like medication, seeing if there's anything that you can do specifically for ADHD to make your life easier. So I was like, okay, great. Had a bit of a cry about that, like, okay, so you mean like if someone had picked up that I had ADHD years and years and years ago, actually some of the situations I've been in could have been negated if I had been like knew how to deal with having ADHD. Great. It's fine, I don't need to have a mental breakdown over that. And then we moved from the UK to Malaysia, and during that time, so in the UK, one of the drugs that you get given for ADHD is actually illegal in Malaysia, because it is an actual drug. Like, people take it to get higher and stuff. So I was like, I don't want to start medication in the UK just in case they come over and I can't stay on that medication. I have to start the process again. I was like, let me wait until I'm in Malaysia. Again, it got worse, of the sense of my brain just being so busy, and an inability to just focus, an inability to just kind of like stick onto one thing, plus like decision paralysis and rejection sensitivity to dysphoria and all of that. And then, alhamdulillah, like 4 weeks ago, I was medicated. I'm on the medication now. We've started just going up to the higher dose of it. And honestly, I cannot believe that if someone had picked this up sooner, I could have been feeling like this for so long, for so many years. My brain is quiet. I can focus, I can achieve things, I can complete tasks. I don't get stuck in this cycle of sitting and scrolling and being physically unable to get up and make a choice and do stuff. I still have issues with rejection sensitivity dysphoria, but I understand it now, and I'm able to give myself that space to kind of go, okay, no, normal people don't react like this to criticism. However, criticism is a good thing, criticism helps us grow, helps us become better people, helps us improve and become better versions of ourselves, not just for us, but for the people around us. And it just like, over the last 4 months, 5 months of being diagnosed and now being medicated, and kind of truly understanding, when I got diagnosed with the combined ADHD, and she was like, you do have it quite severe, and told me some tips of what to look at to kind of learn to deal with it, to learn coping mechanisms and stuff. And I didn't realize, just coping mechanisms by itself are so hard, but pairing that with medication over the past week or two has changed how I am able to exist in this world so much. And to think that as a child, as a teenager, as a 20-year-old, I could have been feeling like this so much sooner is just a little bit heartbreaking. I have to say, I am very, very grateful for everything that I've gone through, even the things that I haven't really discussed in this video, because this is the first time I am actually talking about my mental health on a public forum that could be seen by literally anyone, anywhere in the world. There is so much. To think that, I am grateful for those things, because I think they made me a better person in the long run and gave me certain characteristics and abilities to deal with certain situations that I wouldn't have otherwise, and they made me such a stronger person. You know, like if someone tells me, oh, you know, bad news, or you're not doing good enough, yeah, sure, it upsets me. But instead of like going and hiding in a corner like I did when I was in primary school, it gives me this need and drive to go, okay, I am going to do better, inshallah. Like, there is no other option for me, and it helps me to push towards that, to push towards better. I can deal with, you know, changes and bad situations. Like if you're ever in an emergency situation, you kind of want me there. But I would never have those characteristics if I hadn't gone through what I went through. But it doesn't change the fact that things I was told off for as a child, things that made me feel like I didn't fit in or I was bullied for as a child, was because of ADHD. And if I had been diagnosed earlier, my whole kind of outlook could have been very different. But yeah, that's my story of being diagnosed with ADHD, and kind of, in a nutshell, what it's been like and how we have arrived to ADHD, and how I do feel like it is finally the right diagnosis, the right medication, the right treatment plan, and everything like that. If you have any questions, please do ask. But also, if you're a parent or you're an adult and you think you or someone else potentially has ADHD, you know, and it's not just from like one TikTok video or whatever, you've looked into the symptoms and you've done your research and you've read all the journals and you've done all of this, and you think, actually, yeah, maybe this person being diagnosed with ADHD and learning those coping mechanisms, learning how to deal with it, potentially even being medicated, could really help them. Have that conversation. Speak up. Say it. Talk about it. Because you can, as someone with ADHD, you can end up feeling so wrong, so bad, so not good enough. And that diagnosis, whilst, yeah, it makes you feel a bit strange, it can change that outlook so much. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments. I don't know how much more I will talk about my mental health. I do think it's very important. I think that not enough of us talk about mental health, even on the smaller aspect. Like if you get sad or anxious or stuff like that, I think we all need to collectively speak up about it more, reduce the stigma around mental health so that more people can get the help that they need and deserve. But yeah, if you've watched my video this long, thank you. I really do appreciate you.